joining us today. My name is Allison Davis. I'm a press attaché with the USMC in Tallinn, and I'll be moderating today's press conference with Senator McCain and Senator Hoeven. The senators arrived yesterday in Tallinn and have had a packed schedule. They've met with President Ilves and with Prime Minister Loivas, as well as other Estonian leaders in government. We will have a press conference that goes for as long as it goes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. At 20 minutes through, Senator McCain will be leaving for some separate meetings, but Senator Hoeven will still be available for questions. If you have any questions, if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. When I call on you, please state your name and the news organization you are here with. So I'm going to give the senators, if they would like, the opportunity to make some brief remarks before we start.
I'm Senator John McCain of Arizona, and I'm pleased to return to Tallinn with my colleague, Senator John Hoeven of North Dakota. We've had an excellent series of discussions with Estonian government, military, and parliamentary leaders. From here, we will travel to Latvia, then Lithuania, and Moldova. We're visiting the Baltic countries this week to consult with our allies about how we must respond together to Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea, its ongoing military intervention in eastern Ukraine, and its other efforts to pressure its neighbors, including in this region. We've agreed that the West must provide far greater diplomatic, economic, and military assistance to Ukraine, and we've made clear that the United States is totally committed to our obligations to the collective defense of our NATO allies. More broadly, we agree with Estonia's leaders that Russia's actions in Ukraine mean that the United States, Europe, and NATO cannot continue with business as usual. Instead, we must recognize the reality of the challenge posed by Russia under President Putin and respond accordingly. This does not mean a return to the Cold War, but it should mean a recommitment to NATO's core missions of deterrence and collective defense. This demands more from all of us. It means NATO must shift its force posture in Europe, which has not changed much despite the enlargement of NATO over the past 15 years, toward a more even distribution of our presence and capabilities across this alliance, including here in Estonia and the other Baltic countries. This shift cannot be tactical and temporary. It must be strategic, sustainable, and enduring. It also means that every NATO ally must make the necessary investments in its defense capabilities, at a minimum 2% GDP, as Estonia is doing. At the same time, we and Estonia's leaders agree that European countries need to increase their efforts to diversify their supply of energy, and as Senator Hoeven will discuss, the United States can be an important part of that solution in Europe. In the last century, the United States always supported the captive nations here in the Baltic region. We must all do the same now for Ukraine. We cannot and we must not give up on Crimea or any other part of Ukraine that Mr. Putin seems to claim by force. This kind of aggressive neo-imperial behavior is fundamentally at odds with our vision of Europe whole, free, and at peace, and indeed the core principles of the post-war international order. We did not seek this challenge, nor did we deserve it, but we must rise to it all the same, for the interests and values that are shared across the transatlantic community depend on it. Senator Hoeven.
Pleased to be here with Senator McCain. Estonia is truly a beautiful country. I want to thank the U.S. Ambassador to Estonia for his great hospitality and for introducing us to leaders here in this country. We stopped in Norway prior to coming to Estonia, and in both countries had opportunity to meet with leaders to better understand the facts on the ground in Eastern Europe as they understand them. And we focused in on a number of things. Certainly, what should the response be to President Putin and Russia's action in the Ukraine? And clearly that has to be a comprehensive response, not only on the part of the United States, but in close concert with the European Union and with NATO. And it's very important, very clear that we need to reinvigorate the actions of NATO, our operations together, stand strong as a very important alliance. And the other thing that we focused on, particularly in Norway, but then also here in Estonia, is in a truly comprehensive approach. We need not only political, economic, diplomatic sanctions. We not only need to do that as a united front, United States together with Europe, but we need to address the energy piece as well. And that's one of the reasons that I came. That's a big part of why we stopped in Norway on the way to Estonia. And it's something you in Estonia have done very well. You get very little of your energy, natural gas, from Gazprom. And so that's a strength for you. But right now that's a weakness in terms of Europe. And it's also a factor, obviously, in the united response that we need to have to this Russian aggression. And so we need to come up with ways between the United States and the European Union to address that energy piece. In our country, we're producing an incredible amount of energy. My state's a great example, oil and gas. We need markets for our energy, and you need alternative energy sources in Europe. And that's why we've put forward legislation to address not only, in our Congress, to not only address energy security in our country, but help provide natural gas to Europe. And that is part of a comprehensive response. And we need to act now, and we need to act together to address what is a tremendously concerning situation in the Ukraine, and make sure that it does not continue and that it does not spread to other regions of Europe. Thank you.
Questions?
I can briefly take questions. Someone here with the green pen?
Hi, I'm Anna Gabronsky from ETV. A question to Senator McCain. You said yesterday that the U.S. should give some weapons to Ukraine. What kind of weapons were you talking about? Were you talking about air missile defense like Stingers, or tanks, or small weapons?
Well, first of all, I think it's absolutely inexcusable that we have not provided the Ukraine government with ability to defend themselves with defensive weapons. There is, as we speak, further unrest in eastern Ukraine caused by Russian agents and provocateurs. There is obvious movement and maintenance of major Russian military on the eastern border. They don't even have defensive armor. They don't have night goggles. They don't have much equipment that they're badly in need of. And yes, they need light weapons, and I believe they need anti-tank weapons, and they need anti-air. But first, I would give them the necessary means to defend themselves. And for us not to do that is absolute inexcusable and shameful behavior. And I'm embarrassed that we will not give them what they need to defend their country, which has been invaded and dismembered by Colonel Putin.
Yari?
Associated Press, Yari Tanger. I would like to take on that energy question you both brought up, and specifically concerning this possibly importing natural gas to Europe.
Right.
And it seems that now that lots of Europeans are putting lots of hope on this, that maybe in the future the U.S. could import this gas to Europe. But it seems to me that this seems to be a very controversial issue in states, in the Senate too. And apparently the gas companies are opposing this. They could get higher price of the gas in Asia and so on. So what is your view on this?
So I think it's both an energy security issue for Europe, obviously, with the situation where Europe gets now 1/3 of its gas from Gazprom. That's truly a national security issue, and we see how important it is right now as events are playing out. But understand, in our country, we produce more natural gas than we consume. We produce now about 30 trillion cubic feet of natural gas a year. We consume 25 trillion. We need markets. Right now, we're flaring that gas off. So your point is right. If you look backwards, from a historical perspective, there's been a lot of opposition to export of natural gas because we consume more than we produce. Now that we produce more, this is truly an opportunity for our country. We need markets. So instead of flaring off this gas, we can actually sell it and capture it, better for the environment, sell it, creates jobs, and helps our economy grow, and helps Europe meet its national security need. That's the message, the argument that people need to understand so that our legislation can advance, which would allow LNG facilities to be built in the United States, and we can move the gas to Europe. Now, I understand that this doesn't happen overnight. This takes a number of years. But if you look at Russia's situation, they're also in a situation where they need the European market. President Putin is now talking to Sinopec and the Chinese about moving gas into the Chinese market, but that will take time because he would have to build a pipeline. That gives us time to develop the LNG facilities and move energy into this market. It truly is a beneficial situation both for the United States and for our European allies.
Could I follow up on your question? Facts are clear. Crimea has been invaded, even though Vladimir Putin and Lavrov lied about it while it was going on. They're now threatening eastern Ukraine. And the one thing and first thing that the Ukrainian government asked us for is the ability to defend themselves. And for us not to do so can only encourage Vladimir Putin into other adventures, including moving over into Moldova and eventually threatening the Baltic states as well. Our failure to help is a signal of encouragement to Vladimir Putin. And it's not only shameful, but it can be harmful to the security of Europe.
On the black sweater.
Hello, I'm Wojciech from the English service of the Estonian National Broadcaster. I have a question about the weapons as well. Do you think there is a diplomatic solution, or is it beyond that, something that the country could be resolved diplomatically, or are there some specific avenues that you can see in that regard?
I think there's a diplomatic solution, but only if Vladimir Putin recognizes that there is a very heavy price to pay for his aggression. And that ranges from much more dramatic sanctions. Right now, we've only sanctioned a handful of people and one bank. It means that we have military exercises, including here in the Baltics. We also need to, I believe, address the natural gas and energy issue in the long term that Senator Hoeven just talked about. We can restart the missile defense systems in the Czech Republic and Poland that we abandoned. We can have severe and strong penalties against individuals and corporations, including addressing Russia's behavior in violation of the Corrupt Practices Act, which, as we know, Russia acts in a totally corrupt fashion. We're the strongest with our Europeans, the strongest combination in the world. We can make Vladimir Putin pay a heavy enough price that it can be settled diplomatically.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, I think that the economic sanctions truly will have an effect on Russia. I mean, I think that they truly can stop the kind of adventurism we're seeing from Putin right now.
If they're tough enough.
If they're implemented.
Right now, they have been minuscule, in my view.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Provided that the U.S. does send weaponry to Ukraine, what would be the next potential, most likely scenarios after that in terms of developments? Provided that it's a known fact that the U.S. is providing weapons to Ukraine, what do you think would transpire of that?
If I understand your question, why should we provide arms to Ukraine?
She's saying what would happen.
Oh,
If the United States does, then what would happen next?
I believe that if the United States provided the Ukrainian government with defensive weapons, that could help convince Vladimir Putin that further aggression into Ukraine will exact a heavier price. there's no doubt he can succeed. But if his losses and what he has to pay for that aggression is higher, it may change his calculation. And on the other hand, what if they have no help? They're defenseless. Are we going to sit by and watch him roll over the entire eastern Ukraine? Is that what the United States of America and our allies are about? When Russia invaded Afghanistan many years ago, we sent lots of weapons in, and the Russians were driven out of Afghanistan, and it began the collapse of the then Soviet Union. It's a tradition in the United States of America to help people who were the victims of aggression, and apparently this administration has abandoned that principle.
We have to.
Yeah, we'll take a couple more questions.
Sir, the white hair.
Mikhail Vladislavov, just Baltic Channel News of Estonia. Do you think that the response for sanctions of European Union, if we take into account Luxembourg's meeting of ministers from the West, are strong enough really to stop Russia and to stop Putin?
So far the response has been of the most minimal. It's been almost a joke. 11 people and 1 bank. And I have to be very honest with you, I'm not optimistic about what the Europeans will do. It requires strong, tough American leadership, and then maybe the Europeans will act more vigorously. Right now, I do not see the Europeans doing anything but meeting.
But united leadership, I believe, would stop him. I believe that the United States, united together with EU, imposing these sanctions, I believe it would stop him.
The question is whether they will or not.
I'm afraid we have to take.
Do one more.
One more, ladies in the address.
TV Channel 2. What is your opinion? Is it important to set up here in Estonia a permanent NATO base? Because there has been a discussion that it should be in Baltic states, but what is your opinion? Should it be here in Estonia because we are the closest to Russia?
I think it's very important that we have both permanent and periodic exercises here in the Baltic states. It is now on the front line. And to help with exercises, with some permanent military operations and exercises, I think that needs to be increased and increased significantly. I also, again, am proud that Estonia is spending 2% of its GDP on defense. We will be urging our friends in Latvia and Lithuania to do the same. Okay, thank you.